Welcome back to the studio. 2.25 hours of Emmanuel Macron laying out the programme for the future of the French government. All manner of issues were discussed. For me, the headline, I think, is possibly his words about Ukraine, about the need to make sure that Russia do not win, but also President Macron had things to say about the conflict in the Middle East, as well as all manner of domestic issues. Here to discuss in the studio, Douglas Herbert, our international affairs commentator, and Léa Chamboncel, feminist journalist and manager of Popol Media. Léa, thank you for being with us. Douglas, great to see you here too. We also have our correspondent at the Elysee, James André, about to plug in and join us very shortly. Let's start here in the studio to discuss and pull apart bit by bit what President Macron was saying. Léa, can I ask you, at the start of all this press conference, Macron was saying he wants a stronger, fairer France. Did you hear things in what he said that make you think that could happen?
That's a good question. I didn't quite focus on that. I was obviously listening because we were here trying to understand where he was trying to bring us and where he was actually trying to bring the people in the audience. My real question is, who was he actually addressing? Because obviously, if he was addressing the French population, like normal people watching TV on a Tuesday evening, he lost them, for sure. I doubt that everyone was actually sitting in front of the TV tonight watching the President Macron giving his speech to the nation. Though I believe he was actually trying to address his majority and his political, let's say, allies. That what it looked like. And also the word he used, like he was talking about l'audace, we need to be efficient, we need to be stronger. It really sounded like material for a political campaign rather than just, a president addressing the population in general.
He is a politician after all. One would expect as a politician he'd behave like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm still trying to understand what was the goal, and I'm almost, asking myself, is he actually trying to challenge his own self in sort of a way, because obviously he's not running for a new political campaign because he can't be reelected. He still had 3.5 years in office. He looks like, maybe he's looking for to renew the way he's communicating. But what was really striking me tonight is that he was talking almost facing eyes in eyes to the ministers, just as if he was at the head of the government. He is not. Our constitution says that at the head of the government, you have the prime minister that was sitting there just as the other ministers and had no particular role. He's just a minister among the others. And Macron was actually addressing directly the Minister of Health, addressing directly the Minister of Education, saying, you need to do a bit more of this, a bit more of that. And Gabriel Attal just sitting there, crossing the arms and being, yes, yes. So that was, I do believe, quite painful for him. And Macron was just taking the role of the head of a government. That's it.
So do you feel that maybe he was treading on the toes of the likes of the Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal?
Yeah, and that would have been a bit painful, I believe.
Painful. Douglas?
You could see it with Gabriel Attal, I think. There was a sense of almost some of these ministers, they had to strain to pay attention, right? Because at any moment the camera could be on them. They could not be seen either looking at their phones or nodding off. But, Mark, I think my big takeaway is the style of it, right? We went into this presser. It was billed by the French presidential palace as a chance, as we said, we use the word rejuvenate, to revive the French presidency. And that the style was very old and time-worn. And what do I mean by that? It was sort of this quintessential, almost holier-than-thou French style of communicating when it comes to the presidency, beginning with what was supposed to be a 15 to 20 minute sort of monologue, a speech by the president, which was actually 26 minutes before even the first question was given. Very different than, say, sort of the Anglo-Saxon model where you have the head of state come out, make a few, cursory greeting comments, I'm here now to hear your questions. I hope I have some answers for you. Cut to the chase. This was not cutting to this chase. This was the Elysee wanting to have its cake and eat it too. Have his speech and then have have not just questions from a few journalists. They had 400 journalists there. This is a Putin-style number of journalists at the press conference. I had elements of the Putin press conference in terms of the number of journalists in the room and the length of the press conference. It wasn't Hugo Chavez 8 hours, but it was 2.5 hours or something. And also a little bit of the U.S. State of the Union elements of that. What do I mean? Having the whole government having to sit there in the room, all the ministers, all the king's horses, and all the king's men sort of forced, literally, not chained to their seats, but forced to listen for 2.5 hours and look like they are, lapping up every word and paying attention. So it's highly orchestrated, highly stylized. I'm not quite sure if the spin doctors, the communication doctors in the French presidential palace, if the takeaway is, if they wanted to rejuvenate the message in the presidency, send a new message. I'm not actually sure if the exercise and the way in which it was carried out and conducted really played in their favor.
Douglas, for now, thank you. Léa, please stay with us. Let's go to James André, who, like Léa and Doug, was watching the events as they unfolded. But James was there at the Élysée Palace, now joining us by phone. James, I understand you're in one of the eaves of the Élysée Palace, just coming away from the madding crowd there. Give us your sense of how this went for Macron and whether the people got the answers they were looking for. Give us a sense of that.
Well, I think that it was indeed very choreographed, and when you actually break down everything that was asked and all the answers, in fact, basically Macron got a chance to answer all the questions that everybody was asking themselves, which quite obviously was in a sense, organized. We've been told there was a structure as to, the various parts, which were kind of balanced. You had the first part about, ordinary life, second part politics, third, more about the international issues. But the fact of the matter is, what we do see is that, yes, there are a lot of messages there. One of them, for example, is that, yes, this is a rejuvenated government, but it's also very much touching on it's more of a right-wing government we've ever heard Macron talk about until now. He's talking about more discipline at school, for example. He's talking about more control and more security on the streets. He's also talking about getting people back to work, inciting people to work more, work on the wages these people are getting, and also a few nods when it comes to, we saw this immigration law that passed through just barely a few weeks ago, and that put the government in turmoil in the first place. That kind of, ignited the need for this reshuffle we've been seeing over the past few days. Well, addressing that issue very much, saying that, yes, he stands by that law, but no, it is not the law that the French national rally wanted, that it is something different. Basically, very much trying to send out this message of confidence, of guidance. And in a sense, he has achieved that. I mean, you saw Emmanuel Macron there speak for 2.5 hours with no notes, being very articulate, and indeed, passing these messages. But yes, you can tell that basically the message is one of a little more austerity maybe, but also very much retaking the country in the government's hands, and indeed, moving ever so slightly to the right when it comes to politics.
James, I will get back to you very shortly. Please stay with us. It's interesting to get your take on the situation, because you were right there looking the president in the eyes as he was making his 2.25 hour speech, press conference, call it what you like, but certainly outlining this rejuvenation of the government that we're talking about. James André reported that at the Élysée. In the studio, Léa Chamboncel and Douglas Herbert to discuss more about the situation.